Well, thanks very much for joining me today.
Okay.
So, Brad,
Our pleasure. Thank you for having us.
oh, cool. So, my first question for both of you is, what inspired you to play the blues?
Okay, I'll start. Growing up, my parents had separate record collections, and my father listened to country, and my mother listened to jazz. And the first time I heard blues was on a television show called Hootenanny, and they had Sonny Terry and Brown and McGee,
Oh, wow.
and they had Dave Von Ronk, and they had some bluegrass music that sounded blues to me. I mean, it sounded like the same kind of music, and I just fell in love with the sound.
That's
And
awesome.
I did. And you want to know the influences?
Yeah.
That's another question.
That's another question, right? That's part two of the question, I guess. So that inspired me to learn more about it and play it. I would love to have played it, and so my biggest influence, I guess, was Jimmy Reed, because he was heard on the radio on all the stations that had jazz, blues, and country music. One of his songs are on there all the time,
Okay.
and so I got interested in him, and then Tampa Red, because of his whole recording career from 1927 to 53 was it covered all bases of blues music. It had rags, it had folk music, it had pop, and
He's very diversified.
yeah, very diversified, and it intrigued me, and I wanted to play like that.
Okay.
And then, of course, Chuck Berry, even though he wasn't considered blues, he was more rock and roll, but he had a lot of blues and country and boogie woogie in his music, and his lyrics were like unbeatable. So I fell in love with that.
Cool. Margie, you want to share how you got into the blues?
Yeah, well, I came up through the folk blues revival, and I was lucky enough to live near New York. So I heard a lot of music and had records by Kerner Ray and Glover, Rick Von Schmidt, Dave Von Ronk, all of whom were dipping into the blues canon. And when I was involved in folk music, and when I began to hear records, and when I heard Elmore James, I knew that this music called me greatly. And as far as influences, I'm really lucky to be among the many people here in New York that participated in the scene at Dan Lynch, and was lucky to attend jam sessions run by the Holmes brothers with Popsy Dixon, and be able to see these great Carolina bluesmen up close and personal. And they and the jams later run by Frankie Paris and Big Ed Sullivan gave me a grassroots schooling, and also exposed me to my great contemporaries here in New York.
What about Bill Dicey?
Bill Dicey had not, he had gone back to Annapolis by the time. This was in the early 90s.
Okay, yeah.
Early to mid 1990s. There was a great concert for Bill Dicey just before his death. His children brought him up in a station wagon, and it was wildly attended at Lynch's. And it was so wildly attended that the fire department were there, and they only let people, 3 can come in because 3 went out, and that was an all-night affair in support of Bill Dicey, and that was an absolutely wonderful event. In terms of influences for my playing, 2 things. As a bass player, I came upon an album by Jimmy Yancey. It's almost a solo album, but his wife very imperceptibly chimes in on vocals, Mama Yancey. And that had a great influence on my bass playing. His left-hand piano lines, although in the context that I play today, probably I don't use too much of that. But when I started out, I was playing those kind of lines. And
Did you always play bass?
no, I came to it as an adult.
Oh, wow.
I loved the blues, and I actually had a new wave band where I was the singer called Margey and the Atlantics, and that was in the late 80s. But I wanted to play, and I wanted to participate, and I figured that possibly I could get a handle on the bass. It seemed like the easiest thing. So
that's still difficult for, I don't know, I couldn't do it.
yeah. And of course, you know, I couldn't help be influenced by the great female blues singers like Ma Rainey and Bessie Smith, Lil Green. And although my own approach doesn't, you know, when I get a chance to sing, doesn't really reflect them, but it manifests in my writing. And for example, the song I wrote, Twice as Nice, which is a classic, slow, grinding double entendre blues, which became the title song of our second to most recent record, Twice as Nice, was definitely influenced by those great ladies. And you know, we have to mention Victoria Spivey because she was here in the New York scene. I didn't meet her, but I did meet Lenny Konstad, who was her companion, and certainly was exposed to her and her music through Lenny and through the other people who she helped. Yeah.
Yeah. I think Tonio played with her a lot too, right? Which you played with Tonio?
Yeah, Tonio was part of what they call the Spivey Boys.
Okay.
It was Danny Russo, Tonio, Arthur Nielsen was one of them.
Okay.
Andy Story, and Cab Lucky, who didn't consider him the Spivey boy. He was already an artist, but
Okay.
that was the New York scene for a while, and I came in on that, on the tail end of that. You know, I came from Eastern Long Island, so when I came into Queens, there's this whole big blues movement, which was right up my alley, and I loved it.
Yeah, yeah. I'm sure Manny's car wash must have been.
Yeah.
I hear stories, and I'm just so jealous I missed it.
Oh well,
that's a history.
I forgot a big influence, which is that for the past 35 years, I've been playing bass with Big Frank and the Healers, with Big Frank Mira, and certainly playing with him, who is absolutely steeped in Howlin' Wolf and Muddy Waters, and J.B. Hutto. That was a huge influence for me. And when that band started out, it was known as Mohair Sam. And as Mohair Sam, we performed regularly at Manny's Car Wash. So, and of course, knew the great Buddy Fox.
Yeah, I read that you answered the Village Voice ad. Now that I remember the Village Voice.
Yes, I answered. The way I hooked up with Frank was I answered a small space musicians wanted ad in the back of the Village Voice, and it took me a long time to get through because his line was busy. And well, you know, Frank didn't have too many questions for me. He was going to be holding auditions. This was over the weekend. I think he was going to be holding auditions on Tuesday, and he said, "Who's your favorite blues artist?" And I said, "Oh gosh, there's so many I can't choose." He says, "You have to say one." So I said, I guess if I have to say one, it's going to have to be Elmore James. And he said, "Okay, you're in. I've been talking to people all day. They've been talking about all this derivative stuff. Come down on Tuesday to Charles Lane."
That's great. That's great. All right. So next question is, how has your sound evolved over the years?
Well, I hope my sound has evolved into something enjoyable to listen to.
It's always enjoyable.
And I don't know, all the years listening to this music and playing, I found my guitar has evolved. My guitar playing has evolved into all my influences, and in a way it became a distinctive way of playing, which all the hotshot guitar players that I know, which I worship, tell me I'm authentic and I have a different style than most people. So I take it as a compliment.
Absolutely. And that's because of is it also attributed to your tuning?
Yes. My open tuning, yes, is Vestipal. They call it Vestipal tuning, which is open E and open D. And those are the two keys they use that in. The other tunings are tuned a little differently, like open G and open A. The strings are tuned in a way you can't hold all the strings down at once, where Vestipal tuning, you can hold down all the strings with like one finger and get a chord.
Oh, okay.
Not moving your hands too much. Bo Diddley used that a lot.
Okay. Does it happen on a bass as well, or just guitar?
Just guitar.
The bass is sort of already set up that way?
No, the bass is set up with the normal increments of the notes.
No, I don't. I just play regular bass lines. The Vestipal tuning is only for the guitar.
Okay.
Yeah.
If people want to know the derivation of that word festival,
that's one of the questions.
Yeah, so let's go into it.
Oh dear. Well, yeah, but that's not our. Okay. Well, the actual term Vestipal, and this is according to internet research that comes via musicologist Stefan Grossman. So I will credit him up front, but. Back in the day of plantation times, people used to enrich their children by giving them cultural lessons, needlepoint, watercolor, guitar. And the people who would come around to teach these people were going to teach them to play something that was accessible and easy. So they had them play in this Vestipal tuning. And it wasn't called that then. It was just, you're learning guitar. But they would learn these set pieces to perform when their parents would have big parties. And one of the pieces was called The Battle of Sebastopol, which is in Crimea. But there was a piece, this would have been in the time almost of Sousa, John Philip Sousa, or even before. So this piece, they play along, and then when the battle happened, you hit the guitar. And so people learn this kind of music. Now, the hired help on these estates and plantations were hearing this music, and they would take it for their own music. Possibly they had access to those same instruments, or and they. So the word Vestipal is a bastardization of Sebastopol, the Battle of Sebastopol. So some people called it Vestipal, Vestipal, Bastopol. And I was also lucky to work a little bit with the Harlemite Wild Jimmy Spruill, and he used that tuning sometime too, and he called it Rangoon tuning.
Huh, really different.
So this word Vestipal became attached to a particular kind of guitar tuning that derives from that one piece and other pieces that they were learning in their that these youngsters were learning in their repertoire. So when the band, when it came time to make a band with Brad, he said, "Oh, I need a band name. I'd like a band name with a V, but like the Vagrants is already used." And I said, "Well, you play Vestipal tuning. Why don't we be the Vestipolitans?" And so we are. Now, I'm not sure that was a wise decision, because people can't spell it and then pronounce it and remember it.
I think people remember it. I've had people question me like, "What's a Vestipolitan?" I'm like, I don't know. Now I know.
Now you know more than you want to know.
So that's your answer to one of the questions.
Yeah, that's cool. So, what makes your band so special?
I guess because we play a lot of original music set to the type of blues that we like. Either it's a rag or a folk blues or an old rock and roll R&B number. We kind of emulate those sounds in our songwriting. Margie and I both write either separately or together, and I think that's what makes it a little special, I guess.
Yeah, for sure. I like this. You're very diversified. It's not just one style of music. It's nice to have a full.
Well, blue. When I played with some of the old timers,
quite a few.
they said that when they started out, it was all one music down south. It was both black and white, and I can't say that today too much because people get all upset, but it was actually black and white together playing the same music, and it's mostly folk oriented, and it branched out into the Afro-Americans started to play it their way and the whites played it their way, but it's all comes from the same pool, I should say.
And also in the era of radio and records, especially early on when these media were new, everybody was listening to everything, and people were influenced by pop music, by other musics that were coming up popularly that sounded good, like Western swing, and elements would go in there. And now skipping ahead to later in history, a prime example is how on radio stations often to the left of your dial had a big hit with Booker T and the MG's Green Onions, and the riff was picked up and turned into Help Me, which is a very popular blues song, and by Sonny Boy, and a lot of people will tell you it was the other way around, but I think not, because musicians are sponges, and any strain of good music will be picked up and woven into the tapestry.
Yeah, well, that's neat. Do either of you have any pre-show rituals before you go up on stage?
Yeah, I go over the lyrics in my head a few hours before I play because I'm almost afraid of forgetting them. And I play the guitar unplugged. Maybe I walk around, just getting limbering up. But that's basically maybe
that's
sometimes
to remember. Gosh, between the
maybe
notes,
sometimes yelling at Margie, to help me. The stage, the jitters.
And for me, and I think this goes for most musicians, I absolutely have to handle my own stuff so that I know that, I have, and sometimes, as you'll see, it's not always true, but that I have all my accessories and that my bass really did get loaded, my amp really did get loaded, and the proper cables, because if someone else takes them, you don't have that muscle memory of it happening, and it can be very disconcerting.
So then you prefer to set up the stage yourself for your equipment?
Well, this is more about like
packing,
loading the car, loading hotels. I have to touch my own stuff.
Okay. And you play a different kind of bass. It doesn't have the traditional neck.
Actually, I play both.
Okay.
I can play a bass with a headstock just fine.
I'm assuming it's a lot heavier.
Yes, that's the thing. A dear friend's brother passed away, and they were getting rid of his things, which included musical instruments, and they offered me this bass at a very good price, and of course I took it, wanting to have something of this person's belongings, and I found that it was much easier for me to transport, especially around the city, and ducking in and out of subways, and then it sort of became my go-to axe. It sounded great, and a lot of times, especially in New York City, I'm getting myself there, and so I'm not going to want to take a great big heavy guitar. So it became kind of a signature. It remains easy, it remains sounding great, but I do play the other bass. Sometimes I play it, and sometimes if I'm on a recording session, I'm asked to play a different bass. I keep thinking I ought to get back into my other bass. Now, the other thing about Big Frank Mira is when I first started playing with him, I had my Yamaha BB330, which I still have. And we would play regularly at a place called St. Mark's Bar and Grill.
Mhm.
And it has had a teeny stage. In fact, one of the Rolling Stones' early music videos was recorded there. But we were all squished together. And Frank, who remains obstreperous, but was really obstreperous as a young man, would turn around and untune my tuning peg right in the middle of everything. And then I'd have to scramble and get my tuner. This was before the days of digital tuners, and get myself together. And he just thought this was wildly funny. So no one can mess on the Steinberger bass that I play now. The tuning pegs are way down at the bottom, tucked into the body, and no one can mess with your tuning while you're playing.
It's Frank proof.
Frank proof, yeah.
Yeah, and his ilk, except I don't think there's anyone else like Big Frank.
Brad, what kind of guitars do you play? Do you have any preference?
I play Epiphone SG.
Mm-hmm.
I recently played Les Paul SG. No, Gibson SG. It was Margie's guitar. She had, and I used it a lot.
Still have
and still have it. But on the road, people used to line up on the side of my stage and say, "You know what year your SG is?" And I said, "Well, I think it's 72 or so." It goes, "That's worth like $6,000 now." And I said, "Okay, I better take that off the road." And I wanted them to follow me to a hotel room,
Yeah.
get the guitar, So I play a cheaper guitar.
Yeah.
And I get it, I like the sound I get out of cheap guitars, And I play with my thumb instead of picks. So that's another distinctive thing that I do.
It reflects on our sound.
It affects our sound a lot. And I learned that from Hubert. Hubert used to play with his fingers. He didn't play with a pick. And I used to play the bass with him with my thumb only, no pick. And so we had a reputation of, no pick. What kind of guitar players are you? No picks, So,
well, also some of the early folk blues guitar people, the Johnny Shineses and so on, didn't always have instruments that were in the best repair or that were the top-notch instrument. I mean, I think if you go back in history, everybody's talking about saving up and getting their first guitar out of Sears Roebuck, and so perhaps the Vestropolitans are continuing that tradition with the
also,
cheap guitars.
Hound Dog Taylor used to, when he did his shows, and his fans would come up to him when guitar players would like to look at his guitar. And so he let them pick him up and he pick it up and he say, "Now, when I bought the guitar, the man said it was in tune, so don't touch anything." So in other words, he hadn't tuned his guitar for like 30 years. It was like the same tuning. He had it in the same, he didn't tune it. So
maybe he was kidding.
Nah.
I've heard many guitarists, including Arthur Nielsen, say many times, "It was in tune when I bought it."
Yeah.
I guess that comes from Hound Dog.
It comes from Hound Dog. He was famous for saying that.
But Hound Dog may have been kidding too.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Until you pick up the guitar and find out it's way out of tune.
Do you have any upcoming projects or collaborations you want to share with us?
Well, we have our single out.
Mm-hmm.
Called
Oh, it's great, by the way. Peace in My Time.
Peace in Our Time.
Peace in My Time.
Peace in My Time. And it's streaming all over the place.
That's great.
Platforms, and it's free on YouTube now. So that's our newest. The song Margie wrote.
And that was a collaboration, of course, with the great late Jim Davis, our wonderful saxophone and clarinet player, who's now passed on, and with whom we had the privilege of playing and collaborating. So we worked on it with him and a great cast of characters, and including Dave Gross, who helped the archaeological dig of finding the cut and resuscitating it for consumption. So we love that. We love playing with our players, and V.D. King, who produced our last 2 records, has been a wonderful asset to us. In fact, even jumping in on saxophone, which is certainly not his first instrument. So we love working with other great musicians.
Yeah.
That's great. Yeah, that's right. VD plays guitar and sax.
Yes.
And keys.
And keys.
Wow. It's talented.
And anything else. He plays with the harmonica too a little bit. So.
Yeah, actually.
Wow.
But he was involved with us since our beginning in 2009.
2008 or 9?
2008.
2008.
Actually, our first record, Le Blues Hot, was recorded at Dave Gross's, didn't then have a studio, and it was recorded there because VD was mentoring Dave, who later has become a renowned, even Grammy nominated producer. But VD's been there shepherding our sound the whole time through 7 albums.
That's
Yes.
great.
Yeah.
That's great. All right, so I have a hypothetical question. If you're both stuck on separate islands.
Oh,
that'd
yeah.
be my dream with my husband.
Okay. I have my favorite.
What 3 albums would you want to bring with you? It's a tough one. I mean, trying to narrow it down. to 3, I'm
It's hard
sure
to choose.
It's hard to choose, and a desert island is a long time.
So I guess it would be the Chuck Berry album, St. Louis to Liverpool. It was recorded in 1965, and it had its hits of that day, of that time period,
Mhm.
and plus other songs that became classics later on. It wasn't so much his older stuff in the 50s. And I was a young teenager, like 13 or 14 years old at the time. The album blew me away. You know, I had to buy many of them because I kept wearing out the grooves.
Yeah.
And the other one would be Tampa Red. You know, this one particular album called Keep Jumping, I think was put out by Wolf Records. And it's his, all his songs from the mid-40s to the early 50s. And he had 3-part harmony vocals on it with him, and with Johnny Jones on the piano sang, and Ransom Nolan, who played upright bass, sang with him. So I had 3-part harmonies, and it was great songs that he did. And Jimmy Reed, an album called Jimmy Reed at Carnegie Hall.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't at Carnegie. I mean, it was the songs he sang at Carnegie Hall. It was
It wasn't recorded there.
sales thing.
Not a live album.
Yeah, it wasn't a live album, but it had 2 albums, a double album, and one disc was all his new songs that he had to that present day,
Right.
which are late 60s, and the other disc was his hits. So you get a whole variety of sounds from him. And that's really the top 3 for me.
Cool.
Not a bad top 3.
How about you, Margie?
Oh, mine are a little different. I don't know if your viewers are gonna condone these choices, but I guess the first one would be, and I'm cheating here, a 3-disc box set called Ray Charles, The Birth of Soul, which is
I love Ray Charles.
and it just has so much music of so many styles, and there's 3 discs. So that would help me a lot. I love that box set. Ray Charles, The Birth of Soul, on Atlantic. The next one is another absolute favorite jazz album. Art Blakey and the Jazz Messengers, Blue Note 4003, which includes Monin with the original band that had Bobby Timmons and Julian Cannonball Adderley. Blakey's Messengers. Now, I met and heard Art Blakey sit in at Dan Lynch's. He was still around at that point. But one of his greatest contributions, besides being a great drummer, was as a band leader who had group after group of folks come through the Jazz Messengers and go on to greatness, including the Marsalis brothers, Terrence Blanchard, people like that. But his group with Bobby Timmons and Cannonball Adderley, it's just absolutely, this is one of the bluesiest jazz records because it has Monin on it that you'll ever find. So if you're a blues fan, check out Art Blakey and the Jazz Messengers. And then the final choice is a straight ahead blues. I'm going to cheat again because I'm going to take volume 1 and volume 2 of Chicago the Blues Today. Great albums. Volume 1 had Junior Wells for a third of it, his band, J.B. Hutto's band, and Otis Spann's band. And
Nice.
Volume 2 has Otis Rush, James Cotton, and Homesick James. And those records are classics. They're out again on CD. Well, I guess they're out again. The thing is, your question is, what would you take to a desert island?
I know.
It's a little bit disheartening that people are consuming their music in little pieces streamed, because when you make an album, a lot goes into the idea of sequencing and the experience from beginning to end. Mm-hmm. People of my age grew up with what was called album-oriented rock, and what made that so special is this the oeuvre, the piece that the artist made as the album. So I'm glad you asked that question, and I feel again privileged to have been in that generation.
I still have my albums, and I like looking at the artwork, and I like going from side A to side B all the way through. And
you use the phonograph and everything?
I do.
Wow.
Yeah.
Remember the sound, with
the crackle. Yeah,
crackle. And
I like
sound.
It's authentic to me. I don't know. Brings back good memories too. So I know you've got plenty of stories that you can share with us from prior gigs. I don't even know where to start with that one.
Well, I'm just going to do this a couple of I guess stories that from this band. This configuration, because I have stories from.
He has.
Oh, I know. I mean,
Top
Perkins, Jimmy Rogers, Hubert Sumlin.
I gotta. I have to wait till some people die before I tell them.
Well, you can tell on Pine Top playing his standards.
Yeah. Anyway, one situation story is on a New Year's Eve in Long Island City. We had a gig, and we're packing up, and Margie had her bass in the case, and I had my other guitar that I had not taken with me in a case, and they both are identical cases because they're both the same size. And so she picked up my guitar case instead of and we didn't know this until a few minutes before we went on. And we couldn't go back to get the bass. And so she ended up playing bass notes on the electric guitar.
On the bottom
strings. And it sounded cool. It sounded like a Chicago chess record, sound. And people didn't know the difference. We were sweating there.
Yeah, you were saying on those chess records who played they would normally do that?
Excuse me?
On the chess record, they played the bass parts on a second guitar.
That's what I said.
Wow.
Yeah,
I never knew that.
Yeah,
you just play the lower two.
Like Jimmy Rogers, Muddy Waters. They hardly used the bass player because in those days, if Willie Dixon wasn't on the session, they would have two guitar players, one playing rhythm. Three guitar players, one playing rhythm, one playing bass notes.
Okay.
And then the solo who played what they called solo rhythms, which are high end on the guitar. So a lot of the records you hear, you find, oh, how's that guitar player playing all those parts? It's three different people playing.
You'll find that on Jimmy Reed records.
And Jimmy Reed especially
Okay.
did that. But Muddy Waters and Jimmy Rogers were known to have Louis Myers play rhythm, and his brother, Dave Myers, not play bass, but play bass notes on a guitar.
Huh.
So that's what happened that New Year's Eve. I was like completely appalled when I opened the case. It was a big steakhouse kind of place, and it was open to the public, I think, but it was partially a party that was off-duty police, and we had fought our way there through New Year's Eve traffic, and there was no going back. So
that's amazing that you were able to adapt that quick. I mean,
yeah, it was. Thank God we were kind of schooled in that sound.
It wasn't easy because all these other strings were in my way.
Yeah.
So another story where we had a tour in Florida. We had Margie to tell it.
Okay, so we had a tour in Florida, and the drummer that we had with us had to get back to these parts to play another gig. So we were trying to get him to an airport, and it was we had finished playing at night, in the middle of the night, and we're driving, and the gas indicator said that we were on empty, and we were really riding on vapors, and we're trying to find a gas station, and we were in this area of no man's land, Florida, between one place and another place, and there was a road crew. There was a sign that said Avalon Gas, and there was a big road crew with police protecting them. And we said, how do we get to the gas station? We don't know. So we followed the sign. I don't know. We followed the sign. The problem is that Avalon, Florida, was one of those newly created planned communities that were Disney-esque, going to be multi-purpose.
It wasn't built.
It wasn't built yet.
No.
So, but the gas station was built. So we're driving. We didn't know where we were going. This is pre-GPS, anyhow. And there was no Avalon, anyhow. So all of a sudden, out of the swampy area, like a mirage, we saw this big lit up gas station with an enormous convenience store, and we pulled in, and the place closed at 9. I think it was 8:57. We were able to get our gas. So that incident became a song, a line in our song, "The Music Gets Us Through," which is also the title song of our most recent CD, "Riding on Vapors." And Tom, if it hadn't become a line in the song, we probably never would have forgiven you, but we made good of it.
Tom's a drummer that we had.
Okay. All right, so wrapping up, my last question for you is, do you have any words of wisdom for up and coming bands trying to make it up?
Yeah. Well, it's very hard today than it was years ago. But my advice is just don't give up. Keep playing. There's you got to enjoy what you're doing. If you don't enjoy it, because you're not going to get the satisfaction from money all the time. So you're going to have to do it for the fun of it, usually. But you can create your own situations, create a space for people to hear you, and just hang in there. And it's a lifelong commitment. If you really love it, I've been doing it for over 50 years. A lot of ups and downs, and you have to go with the times and economic times and people's pension span, But you got to hang in there, like any art,
Yeah, like as they say with the arts, you do them because you can't not do them.
Right.
I like that.
So that's about.
Oh, so speaking about the arts, you had a question about hobbies. So.
Yes, that was my next question.
Oh, hobbies. Well, I make abstract art and I write poems, and which some of my poems are on my website, bradvickers.com, and I have a chapbook out. The chapbook is a small book of poems, like 20 poems or so.
Okay.
And I have one out, but a lot of my poetry has been through last 25 years. I've been writing. I've been published in a lot of small publications and journals that cater to poetry. So I'm enjoying that.
That's great. And then what kind of abstract art do you do? Like what medium?
Acrylic,
Okay.
and I do, zigzaggy brush strokes and so, like whatever I feel like doing. And I also, I could draw still life, but I'll draw it in my own way, not so much verbatim.
Sure. That's great.
Things like that.
How about you, Margie?
Well, I also do visual art. I was trained as a visual artist, and oh gosh, for about the past 10 years, I've been involved in collage, but again, abstract. Not a lot of people make collages that recombine photographic images into a surreal story or tableau, but mine are more abstract, formal collages. Formal meaning dealing with design. They're definitely informal, but and I also do watercolor and gouache, and I enjoy doing landscape particularly, and I will try to do that when we go on vacation trips, not so much working trips. There's too much to keep track of with the working trips, but yeah, I'm actively engaged in visual arts as well.
Well, that's awesome. I'll have to see some of your work sometime.
Oh, well, thank you.
I saw one thing Brad recently posted. He did a collage. I don't know if it's a collage, but something about Chuck Berry. It was like a shadow box.
Oh, that's Margie did that.
Yeah.
Yes, that's okay.
Yeah.
That I made. That's another
thing she does.
another thing that I do or did. Although those a friend of mine calls them dioramas. I call them constructions or assemblages. But that one was done, I think, for Brad's 50th birthday, because he's such a huge Chuck Berry fan. And I collected objects that referenced Chuck Berry's song lyrics, and I combined them into a shadow box and gave it to Brad as a gift. But yeah, the original one that I made,
she made a Bo Diddley
was about Bo Diddley.
Okay.
That had skulls and barbed wire in it and so on and so forth. But, a lot of musicians make art. In fact, most of the people that I know that are good musicians are also good artists, good visual artists.
Okay. Well, that's great. Well, I really appreciate your time today. It was very interesting talking.
Thank you.
Oh, it's a pleasure, and we appreciate you, and we appreciate the North Jersey Blues Society lifting up blues and blues artists, and you're doing a great thing. And thank you so much for your time.
Well, thank you.
Since 1982, gotta make the next town, got a show to do. But we'll be alright, cause the music gets us through. The band's riding low as we push towards Kalamazoo. Not a car in sight and it feels like Timbuktu. But we'll be alright, cause the music gets us through. Radio, tape, deck, CD, what the heck, iPod, oh God, just keep the the music coming. Feeds the spirit, it soothes the soul. Now I know why they made rock and roll. We're running out of gas and there's 15 miles to go. We can ride on vapor, done it many times before. But we'll be alright cause the music gets us through. This song sounds weird, it must be a different mix. If it ain't broke, why do they try to fix? But we'll be alright cause the music gets us through. Radio, tape, deck, CD, what the heck, iPod, oh God. Just keep the music coming, feeds the spirit, it soothes the soul.